Iridescent Powders. In this video, we're going to go over the iridescent powders. There are a lot of different ways to use the iridescent powders, and we don't talk about them near as often as we should. Essentially, they are really fine mica powders. And the really cool thing about it is it can really just make any piece pop. So you can see here, I'm just kind of brushing them on. And essentially what I did was I took this brush, got it a little bit wet with just regular distilled water, and I just kind of dip it into the color I want to use. Here I'm going with the blue, and you can see that the more I put on, the more it kind of sinks into the recessed areas depending on how much water I have on. So it's really versatile in the sense that you just kind of have to play with it and figure out, but less water, I can get it up on top, more water, and it kind of wants to flow down into the recessed areas. Now, that being said, you can see it also comes off really easy the more I brush onto it. So it doesn't have any binder in it. It's just powder, and we're using the water as a body to carry said powder. Now, since it's powder, it's not like when you go over with this green like I'm going to do here, it's not like the colors blend and I get more of a greenish blue. You're just going to have some more green. So it's a little bit of this and that, and you can see I'm trying to more do a dry brush, so I have blue in the recessed areas and greens on top, but it kind of, the green's getting a little overpowering on this. But it's meant to show you that you can do two colors. You can layer them as you want. And usually one will be a little bit more powerful. So you can mix them if you want two tones, but I find it's better not to brush on with water in that kind of application. Usually I will try and do a spray-on application instead. Now, the more I work it, the more it just kind of blends around and moves it around. So I'm going to use a hair dryer or a heat gun in this case and just dry out the water essentially. It will dry more into place and will less want to move, but as soon as we get more water on it, it is definitely subject to move again. Again, we're not putting it in a binder on this specific application. So I'm going to do just a little bit more coloring on this to get the color that I really wanted in the recessed areas. And basically what I'm going to do, since this dry brushing is not coming out as clear as I want, you can see a lot of the green powder being left behind, I'm actually just going to use my fingers. And you can use a towel or a spare brush that doesn't have any of this powder on it, but I'm just going to use my fingers and kind of wipe away this excess. So all I have is the iridescent powders in the recessed. And you can see it's got a little blue hint to it, but it's mostly green. And I'm just wiping it right off. That brown tone from underneath is from a Japanese brown patina I did right before just to give a little bit of contrast, and I didn't have bare steel. But now that I've kind of gotten this look that I really wanted, now I'm going to warm it up, right? So we've got to make sure that that water's evaporated. This is still steel. We don't want to trap any moisture underneath the clear coat. But once we have it heated up and all dried out, now we're going to go in, and in this case, I'm going to use ClearGuard. You can use Smart Coat or HydroClear, Everclear. I wouldn't recommend going with the oil or the wax because it's a rub-on. So anytime we rub something on, we are going to disturb that iridescent powder. So I definitely recommend spraying if you're working with those powders without a binder. Now, we keep talking about binders or using water, which isn't a binder. So we're going to use ClearGuard in this case. Here I've got the matte, and I'm going to use my crown sprayer so I don't have to clean out my air or my HVLP sprayer, which you could also use. But I find that using the crown sprayer here is just a very easy alternative. And basically what I'm going to do is just use ClearGuard, put it in, and then put a bunch of iridescent powder in until I'm happy with the consistency. So I've got my ClearGuard all loaded up, and I'm just going to use a little popsicle stick and kind of push in a bunch of this iridescent powder, give it a mix. And it wasn't wanting to mix as thoroughly as I wanted with this little stir stick. So a shake really helped out, or just keep mixing it really well. If you've got clumps, it's not mixed well enough. It's pretty straightforward. So just get a good mix on, and then you'll have a good spray pattern as well. Now, the iridescent powder also works in the Smart Coat, the HydroClear, the Everclear, even the oils and waxes. It would still work. You just got to mix them in good enough. And so some of them are a little easier to mix in, some of them pop a little bit better than others, but overall you just got to play with it and find out what works for you. I'm using the matte because I wanted the iridescent powder to kind of poke out a little bit more. The satin also works really well. So here we're going to spray out of our crown sprayer, and again, you can do this out of a touch-up gun or HVLP sprayer, but I like how the spray comes out because I went pretty heavy on the green, and the green comes in really heavy, but with that Black Magic base on the steel underneath, we have a really nice deep green. But it's nice and kind of vibrant, almost pops a little bit because of that iridescent powder. So I'm going to go in, because I didn't really want the stem to be green, it's just overspray. Since this is clear guard, I'm just using a little bit of the solvent thinner on a paper towel and just kind of wiping it off. Now, this works when it's been pretty recent, so this has been just a few minutes and I can wipe it off really easily. The longer you wait, the longer it will, or the harder it will be to remove that clear guard with the iridescent powder. And here we have our final piece. This is the green and blue iridescent powder over the Japanese brown, and this is the Black Magic with the green iridescent powder over the top. Iridescent Powders is available at www.sculptnouveau.com or by calling us at 760-432-8242.